is going on, homies? My name is TheJongasm, and for today's vidgasm, I'm bringing you guys 113 facts about the Star Wars prequels. If you're one of those people who absolutely can't stand Attack of the Clones or The Phantom Menace, I will put annotations somewhere on your screen so you can just click them and go to each individual movie that you want to learn about. Let's get this show on the road. The subtitle of this film, The Phantom Menace, was the name of a villain in a Flash Gordon comic. The term was also used by NASA to refer to the fact that they failed so many times with sending a probe to Mars that the mission almost seemed cursed. Interestingly, the core plot of The Phantom Menace actually came from George Lucas's first draft of A New Hope. This means that the core plot of the movie was written all the way back in 1975. During the first week of The Phantom Menace trailer's release, theaters reported up to 75% of their tickets sold being to people who just were seeing movies to see the Phantom Menace trailer before them and then leaving when the preview was over. These sets of this movie were only built as high as the actors' heads and computer graphics filled in the rest. Because Liam Neeson is so tall, he actually cost the set crew $150,000 in construction. During filming, Ian McGregor made lightsaber noises as he dueled that had to be removed in post-production. Natalie Portman's voice was digitally enhanced to help distinguish her from the Queen Amidala character and the Padme character. When fully dressed and in makeup, Natalie Portman and Keira Knightley looked so much like each other that when Keira Knightley's mom visited the set, she couldn't tell the difference between Natalie Portman and her own daughter. To this day, the only people who know which actress played Queen Amidala in which scenes are the people who were directly involved with recording and producing those scenes. I thought this next fact was pretty funny. Natalie Portman actually missed the premiere of The Phantom Menace because she was stuck at home studying for her high school final exams. One thing I never knew is that after the film's credits finish rolling, Darth Vader's breathing can be heard. There's only one shot in this film with no special effects added to it, and that is the shot with the dioxide gas pouring out of the vent in the meeting room. Liam Neeson convinced George Lucas to keep the scene where Qui-Gon Jinn puts his hand on Shmi Skywalker's shoulder. George Lucas thought that this might be out of character for the monk-like Jedi, but Neeson thought there should be an emotional connection between the characters. According to Star Wars canon, Obi-Wan's hanging braid is a Jedi tradition common to all Padawan learners. When his master feels that he has reached proper maturity, he cuts the braid with his lightsaber, signifying that his student is now a full Jedi Knight. Jake Lloyd, the guy who played Anakin, quit acting because of the bullying he experienced after the movie's release. The communicator Qui-Gon Jinn uses is actually a redecorated Sensor XL razor for women. Phantom Menace was shipped to movie theaters labeled as the dollhouse to thwart piracy attempts. Denzel Washington, Tom Hanks, Kurt Russell, and Morgan Freeman were all considered for the part of Qui-Gon Jinn. It's pretty hard to spot, but the Starship Enterprise from Star Trek: The Next Generation can be briefly seen amongst the traffic flying around Coruscant. In the Galactic Senate, where Queen Amidala is asking for a vote of no confidence and everyone in the Senate starts standing up and shouting, in the lower right corner you can see there are members from E.T.'s species at the Senate. I find the inclusion of both the Star Trek and E.T. Easter eggs interesting because technically that would mean that they all take place in the same universe. The sound of the underwater monsters growling near the beginning of the film was made by the main sound technician's 3-year-old daughter. The sound of her crying was recorded and the frequency lowered to obtain the sound heard in the film. So all of those noises you hear those underwater monsters making come from a 3-year-old. The sound of the hovering battle tanks used by the battle droids was created by running an electric razor around a metal salad bowl and then digitally lowering the pitch. I don't know how they come up with the idea of these sound effects, but it absolutely amazes me. The sound of the force field during the lightsaber duel with Darth Maul started as a recording of the audio supervisor's neighbor's ceiling fan. Like I said, no idea where they come up with these. Darth Maul's double-bladed lightsaber design was actually inspired by a 1996 comic book series, The Tales of the Jedi: The Sith War. Apparently, Jabba the Hutt actually has a full name and not just the title Jabba the Hutt. I can't pronounce his name, but here it is for you guys. Something like Da Jabba Des Sigilic Tiur? I don't know. Someone give me a pronunciation. According to the script, the chance cube that Watto rolls in his bets against Qui-Gon Jinn is weighted to land with the red side facing up. That's why he gets so mad when Qui-Gon wins the bet. There's no way in his mind that that was supposed to happen. In the German version of the film, the collaborating Trade Federation leaders have a French accent, while in the Italian language version they have a heavy Russian accent. They also have Russian accents in the Czech version, except for the Viceroy, who speaks fluent Czech for reasons that no one knows. The name Jar Jar was thought up by George Lucas's son. There's a secret special feature on the Phantom Menace DVD menu where you can unlock a secret blooper reel that mainly consists of clips of R2-D2 falling down. Andy Secombe based his vocal performance as Watto off of Alec Guinness's performance as Fagin in Oliver Twist. Because Alec Guinness played Obi-Wan in the original trilogy, technically, in a way, Anakin is being passed off of one Alec Guinness impersonator to another. George Lucas based Chancellor Valorum on Bill Clinton. One of Darth Maul's few lines says, "At last we will reveal ourselves to the Jedi, at last we will have our revenge." But nowhere in this movie, nor in any other, does it actually clarify what revenge he's talking about. Darth Maul only blinks once throughout this entire film, and that's when Obi-Wan cuts him in half. And here comes my favorite fact for the Phantom Menace, because it's something I never noticed before. The blue-haired girl that's standing next to Jabba during the pod race is wearing the same golden bikini as Princess Leia. Alright, that was it for Phantom Menace facts. Now it's time to get the ball rolling on Attack of the Clones. This next fact I was going to save to be my favorite fact, but I figured it would be something nice to lead off with. Because of how much everybody hated Jar Jar in the first movie, the working title for Attack of the Clones was Jar Jar's Big Adventure. The release year for Attack of the Clones coincided with the 25th anniversary of the release of A New Hope. This is the only Star Wars film that was not the top box office earner the year of its release, which is kind of unfortunate because it had a budget of $120 million, which is more expensive than any other Star Wars movie that was made. Obviously, that's not taking Force Awakens into account. I don't know how much the budget was for that movie, but for the most part, that's not really taken into consideration for any of the facts that I'm listing. Most of the facts that I'm listing. The big budget does make sense though, because running in 142 minutes, this is the longest Star Wars film that was ever made. One thing I distinctly remember from Attack of the Clones is Anakin slaughtering all of those Tusken Raiders and then hearing Qui-Gon Jinn's voice in the background asking him to stop. Apparently, somehow people think that this was an accident or just a coincidence that it was put into the film, but it's not an accident at all. It's official Star Wars canon that the ghost of Qui-Gon Jinn tried to get Anakin to stop the slaughter. One other thing I thought was very interesting is also according to Star Wars canon, the Tusken Raiders who kidnapped Anakin's mom were paid to do so by Count Dooku, who was ordered to pay the Tusken Raiders by Darth Sidious. Just before Anakin goes on the search for his mother, he has a conversation with Padme at sunset on Tatooine. The camera pans over to their shadows. It looks like Darth Vader is talking to Padme, but apparently that's just a total coincidence. I never really thought that the shadow looked very much like Darth Vader anyway, but some people really felt like it did. One thing that's really cool from the extended universe, although I don't believe it's canon anymore, is that in the Star Wars novel Tatooine Ghost, it's revealed that Anakin's slaughter of the Tusken Raiders passed down into their folklore. The battle is commemorated by the Tusken Raiders by dancing to the sounds of a lightsaber. Rewinding to an earlier scene in the film, Hayden Christensen said that he really enjoyed filming the bar scene because it was one of the few scenes that actually had a real set and wasn't blue screen. When Jango Fett escapes to his ship after the battle with Obi-Wan, he hits his head on the doorway. This is a reference to the stormtrooper who infamously hit his head on the doorway in A New Hope. Samuel L. Jackson has said that the words "bad motherfucker" are engraved on the hilt of his lightsaber, although I don't know if that's true or not. There's no mystical significance to the color of Mace Windu's lightsaber. Samuel L. Jackson just asked the stunt coordinator if he could have a purple lightsaber to match his favorite color, and George Lucas thought it was funny and agreed. Supposedly, one of the real reasons he asked for it though was so he could find himself in the big battle scene at the end of the movie. Just like I said Ian McGregor did in The Phantom Menace, Hayden Christensen also made lightsaber sounds the first time he was handed one in rehearsal. The Yoda doll that was used as a reference point for Christopher Lee's battle with Yoda at the end of the film was given fangs. This was a small prank George Lucas pulled on Christopher Lee referencing his performance as Count Dracula. Here we have a couple of similarities between what happened in the Star Wars universe and what happened during World War II. The Senate voting to give the Supreme Chancellor sweeping emergency powers to go to war against the separatist forces is the same ploy that Adolf Hitler used to gain similar dictatorial power in mid-1930s Germany. Jar Jar Binks, standing in for Senator Amidala, is the one who puts forth the motion to give the Supreme Chancellor those emergency powers. This means that Jar Jar, the most hated character in the Star Wars universe, is indirectly responsible for the fall of the Old Republic and the near annihilation of the entire Jedi Order. The Clone Trooper's rifle design is based on the German MG42 machine gun. The Easter egg that can be found on the Phantom Menace DVD with R2-D2 can also be found on the main menu of the Attack of the Clones DVD. What you're supposed to do is in the options menu enter 11, enter 3, and enter 8, and then a blooper reel will start. However, in the Attack of the Clones DVD, it's not bloopers with R2-D2 falling, but Hayden Christensen. A couple of subtle visual clues were worked into the film to help audiences tell the difference between the two sides fighting in the battles. The good guys, the Republican clone troopers, always move from screen right to left, while the separatist battle droids move from screen left to right. There are also some other lighting and color coding clues as well. The main reason that Hayden Christensen got the role as Anakin Skywalker is because him and Natalie Portman looked good together. The forbidden love affair between Adam and Padme was heavily influenced by the forbidden love affair between Sir Lancelot and Queen Guinevere in The Legend of King Arthur. It's also inspired by the 1992 film The Bodyguard starring Kevin Costner. One thing I definitely never noticed is the final shot of this movie where Padme and Anakin are looking over the lake with C-3PO and R2-D2 at their side is supposed to be a visual reference to the end of The Empire Strikes Back, where Luke and Leia and the two droids are doing a similar thing. The character Aayla Secura, or Sakura, I don't really know how to pronounce her name, was not created by George Lucas. Aayla first appeared in the 19th issue of the Dark Horse Comics Star Wars Republic series. In this film, when Watto is seen on Tatooine, there are flies buzzing around him. The sound effect for the flies was captured when the crew had recorded sound effects of flies buzzing around horse dung at Skywalker Ranch. According to the visual effects supervisor, that big cow thing that jumps over Anakin and Padme can also be seen floating in the asteroid field. Earlier in the film, when that one drug dealer tries to sell Obi-Wan death sticks, well, apparently death sticks are a hallucinogenic drug, although that little interaction was included by George Lucas because he has very strict views on not smoking cigarettes. Although the death sticks guy has two antennae on his head in the scene, it wasn't originally planned that he was going to have antennae, and the actor most likely didn't even know that he had antennae. Luke's land speeder is visible in Uncle Owen's garage in the scenes on Tatooine. One of the reasons that Yoda never used a lightsaber in any of the previous films was because they were unable to make the puppet hold the lightsaber and have it look realistic. Instead of creating a new C-3PO for the film, the designers repainted an aged one used in the original trilogy. In that bar scene when Obi-Wan cuts off Zam Wesell's hand, that's the first chronological time that Obi-Wan cuts off somebody's hand in a bar. But it's actually the second time that we see him do it in the saga, because he does the same thing later with Luke Skywalker. And lastly, you guys, we have my favorite fact of Attack of the Clones by far. According to George Lucas, Obi-Wan's hiding in Geonosis' asteroid field teaches a young Boba Fett a lesson that he uses to his advantage during adulthood. Having learned how Obi-Wan hid from him and his father, he uses the same method to trick Han Solo and hides from him in Empire Strikes Back. Alright, so that was it for Attack of the Clones trivia. Now we are moving on to the third and final part of the trilogy, Revenge of the Sith. This is the best critically received film in the Star Wars prequels, and to no surprise, it was the highest grossing film of 2005. It's also the first Star Wars film to have a PG-13 rating. Before the official subtitle, Revenge of the Sith, was announced, some fans speculated other subtitles like Rise of the Empire and Creeping Fear. I get Rise of the Empire, I don't get Creeping Fear at all. The subtitle they decided on, though, was actually a play on the subtitle for the 6th episode, Return of the Jedi, which was initially called Revenge of the Jedi. They changed Revenge of the Jedi to Return of the Jedi because they didn't want such a negative word like revenge to be associated with Jedi. Revenge also doesn't seem like something that a Jedi would normally partake in. This is the only Star Wars film that did not at least receive an Academy Award nomination for Best Special Effects. It was, however, however, nominated for Best Makeup, but it lost in that category to The Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Normally I would say that's total BS. There's no way that The Chronicles of Narnia should have beaten Star Wars, but take a look at Mr. Tumnus and you get it. The volcanic world of Mustafar, where Obi-Wan and Anakin have their first duel, was designed to look like George Lucas's vision of hell. The images of the volcanic eruption on Mustafar were all real images from Mount Etna in Italy, which was erupting during the time that the movie was being produced. George Lucas deliberately made the Darth Vader suit top-heavy, for instance, making the helmet heavier than it was supposed to be to make Hayden Christensen look like he wasn't accustomed to wearing it. This next fact blew my mind. Every single clone trooper in this movie is CGI. This means there was never a single real clone trooper outfit or helmet created for the movie. The script of the movie identifies Anakin and Obi-Wan using the call signs Red 5 and Red Leader respectively. During the Death Star battle, Luke Skywalker uses the call sign Red 5 and Wedge Antilles uses the call sign Red Leader. Making this fact even cooler, the actor who played Wedge Antilles is the uncle of Ian McGregor who played Obi-Wan Kenobi. Hayden Christensen gained 24.2 pounds for this role, which he said he managed through eating 6 meals a day. General Grievous's breathing problems, in addition to his exposed gut sac, are the result of an encounter with Mace Windu in Star Wars Clone Wars when he was Force-gripped. The sound of him coughing is actually George Lucas's own coughing. In 2007, Dr. Eric Bowie, a French psychiatrist, released a study he co-wrote about Anakin Skywalker, saying that he had bipolar disorder. The body count for this movie is 115, which is the highest of all of these Star Wars movies. That is only if we're counting deaths that we see. If we're counting implied deaths, A New Hope takes the lead. This is because of the destruction of Alderaan and the explosion of the Death Star. After that is Return of the Jedi with the explosion of the Death Star, and then we have Revenge of the Sith. Apart from providing the voice of R2-D2 and the heavy breathing of Darth Vader, Ben Burtt also provided the voices of every super battle droid, every battle droid, and every buzz droid in this movie. When Obi-Wan first finds General Grievous on Utapau, or Utapau, or Utapau, or Utapau, I don't know what it is, I think it's Utapau, but I could be wrong. Regardless, forget that little thing ever happened. When he encounters General Grievous, his first words are "hello there," and when we first see him in A New Hope, the first words he says to R2-D2 are "hello there." There are over 2,200 visual effects for this movie. Just for some perspective, in A New Hope there were only 350 visual effects. After the opening battle, as the transport lands at the Senate building, in the bottom right hand corner of the screen you can see what looks like the Millennium Falcon landing. This has actually been confirmed to be the Millennium Falcon only before it was ever called the Millennium Falcon. At this point it was called the Stellar Envoy. Anthony Daniels, who plays C-3PO, and Kenny Baker, who plays R2-D2, are the only actors to appear in all 6 of the Star Wars films. George Lucas originally planned on having the actor who played Grand Moff Tarkin inserted into this movie despite him dying a couple of years before. They were going to digitally insert stock footage from A New Hope, but that idea was scrapped when the footage was deemed unusable. The process of applying chrome to rubber was created during the production of The Revenge of the Sith, which meant the handles of the lightsabers could be made of rubber, which therefore meant that the lightsabers could be used in stunts and not hurt the actors. This is one of the only 2 Star Wars films to not translate the alien language into English subtitles. The other is Empire Strikes Back. The huge duel at the end of the movie between Obi-Wan and Anakin took over 70,000 man-hours to create. In the battle on Kashyyyk, there were actually only 10 men in Wookiee suits. To make the army look larger, those 10 men were repositioned multiple times throughout the shot so they could be combined with the computer-generated Wookiees and therefore make it all look more realistic. Clone Trooper Commander Cody was named after the comic book hero Commander Cody. The scene where Palpatine announces the Empire while Anakin kills the Separatist leaders was modeled after the famous baptism sequence in The Godfather. The role of Captain Antilles was originally offered to the guy who played Wedge Antilles in the original movie, Dennis Lawson, but he rejected it. Palpatine's line to Yoda, "I have waited a long time for this moment," was also said by Greedo to Han Solo in the cantina before Han Solo shoots him. The hot rod speeder driven by Senator Bail Organa is based on the front of a Tucker that is parked at Skywalker Ranch. The Juggernaut vehicle is based on the designs for the AT-AT Joe Johnston made for The Empire Strikes Back. Like, it's totally obvious that the 2 vehicles are related, but I think it's really cool that the design for the AT-AT, one of the original designs, ended up getting reused for this movie. I also think the AT-ATs would have been a lot less menacing had they looked like how they look in Revenge of the Sith. This movie marks the first time that we ever see 2 lightsabers of the same color clash. When Darth Vader first has his life support suit put on, he has his eyes wide open and we see a first-person perspective of it, but in the novelization, he's actually in a coma and he wakes up in the suit. Honestly, I think that would be a lot more terrifying. This is the only Star Wars film that does not contain R2-D2 in the final shot. Samuel L. Jackson knew that his character was going to die in this movie, so he only accepted the role under the conditions that he didn't go out like some sucker. During the lightsaber duel with General Grievous, it's briefly shown that the second hand that Obi-Wan cuts off is holding a duplicate of Obi-Wan's lightsaber. This is actually the lightsaber that belongs to Shaak Ti, who is seen being killed by General Grievous in a deleted scene set aboard the Invisible Hand during the Chancellor's rescue. Now you guys, this next fact is by far my absolute favorite fact of everything that I just listed for Revenge of the Sith. Palpatine's lightsaber fight with the other Jedi reveals a completely different technique than what has ever been seen before. The Chancellor uses his weapon like a fencing foil, striking with the tip. Since the beam cuts through any substance, this makes even a small strike a killing blow. Except for Mace Windu, all the other Jedi use the edge, which requires a wide space to deliver a stroke. This explains why Palpatine was able to kill so many Jedi in such a short amount of time. Now this might not sound super interesting, but the reason that I loved it so much is because I have always wondered why he just is able to wipe through those Jedi with complete ease. Like, I realize that at this point he is the most powerful Sith in existence if you don't include Jar Jar, so it makes sense that he would be able to take on 4 Jedi, but the fact that he disposed of them so quickly always bothered me. But now that I have the details behind the technique explained, it totally makes sense. But my homies, as Mace Windu would say, this party's over. That was 113 facts about the Star Wars prequels. I hope you guys enjoyed them, and I hope you learned yourselves a little something. If you love yourself some Star Wars or trivia, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I have a new episode of either Secrets of Cinema or Teletrivia, my 2 trivia series, coming out every week. In addition to that, I also have usually 1 Star Wars video at minimum coming out every month. If you know anybody else who would love to learn themselves something specifically about Star Wars just in time for the new release, make sure you hit that share button down below as well. It's a little bit of extra effort, but it's a really awesome way to help support the channel. And as always, I've got the links to my social media accounts in the description down below. That's Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Go give those a like or follow if you're feeling like being a super fan, or if you're interested in getting some behind the scenes content about the channel and my life. Before I head out, I want to say thank you guys so much for watching, and make sure you check back for my personal reaction and review of Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens. May the Force be with you always, and I hope your vidgasm wasn't too messy.